You know, it's pretty humbling to wander through the ruins of an ancient civilization. Humbling and inspiring at the same time. When you walk over stones that were cut and set in place over 1,000 years ago, you just can't help but think about how things have changed and how they've stayed the same. Now, the Maya here at Uxmal, they built an amazing civilization. Gorgeous pyramids, amazing architecture, wonderful feats of art and imagination. Yet it's kind of humbling because as great as that civilization was, in some ways it's all gone. And yet it's inspiring because in other ways it's all still right here. Now, I don't mean the stones and the buildings, but that spirit of the Maya is here. And you know, it's a spirit that's experiencing amazing rebirth in the Yucatan today. Meanwhile, a lot of food lovers from all over the world have discovered the Yucatan, not just as a place to get a tan, but as a culinary destination complete with all kinds of exotic ingredients and flavors, which is the point of this place that I'm taking you to. It's called Los Dos, and it's a cooking school right here in downtown Merida in a restored old colonial building. And like most of the buildings of that era, the simple exterior doesn't begin to reveal the oasis that we'll find inside. It's the home of the school's owner. His name is David Sterling, and he's a designer turned chef from New York that settled here a few years ago to devote his time to studying and teaching about Yucatecan cuisine. Hi,
how are
David.
you? Good to see you.
Thank you very much. I'm so pleased to be here. Thank you for letting us sit in on one of your classes.
You're more than welcome. We've actually just started, so come right on in.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
This place is beautiful.
Today's our Sopa de Lima. Like I said, we're actualizing it. That in Spanish means we're modernizing it. We're bringing it up to date. It's going to be a chilled soup, first of all. Perfect in this weather, right? And instead of the little totopos that normally you sprinkle on, we're gonna put a panucho, a miniature panucho that we're gonna float on top. And it's gonna be delicious, you're gonna love it. What are the components of this soup? Well, we have our consommé, that's the modern part, the very French part, a clarified stock that will have the lima juice added. And the panucho is what we're making right now, and it has a base of tortilla, and then the shredded chicken. Diana here is shredding our chicken. Okay, the first thing you want to do is get a ball like she just did. Take a ball of the dough, and you're going to pat it in your hands, and then using the other hand, cup it around the side to pinch up the edge. It makes a little, sort of like a little pie crust, and then finally she pats out the whole thing to get rid of that edge. There you go. Perfect. Now watch as that cooks, it's going to slowly begin to puff up, which is the secret of a panucho, because in that hollow is where we're going to put some wonderful beans. We slit a little hole in the side, and in that hollow we slip our wonderful frijol colado, which is a strained black bean paste. Absolutely delicious. Notice how she's mashing it around with her fingers to spread it out to the edge. And then we put them in to fry. Just lightly re-crisp them. We don't even need to turn them over, but just to lightly crisp them up. Okay, now we have our wonderfully fried bottoms here, our filled tortillas, and Diana is going to demonstrate how we put the toppings on. It couldn't be easier, but this is our traditional panucho. First, we begin with a little piece of lettuce, Then tops with some of our shredded achote chicken. A couple of slices, one or two, your taste of some tomato. And last but not least, very important, our cebollas en escabeche, our pickled red onions that are ubiquitous throughout Yucatan. And that's our classic panucho. I'm sure you're all starving right now. I know I am. We're going to go inside, though, first, and we're going to try making our more modernized version, okay? Come on in. So now I'm going to explain to you how we make our consommé very quickly. Here it is chilling in the refrigerator. And you can see here, it is beautifully clear and transparent liquid, which is just what we want. I make a basic chicken stock with onion, carrot, the whole shebang. The only real tweak that I give to it for this recipe is I increase the amount of thyme, because thyme with lime goes really well. You'll see what I mean. You're gonna notice both flavors coming together. I clarify the stock then. Very slowly simmer with egg whites beaten into it. The egg whites form around the particulate matter that's in the soup, and eventually when it cools, that all sinks to the bottom, and then I can separate it, and I have my wonderful clear liquid. That's the essentials for how you make a consommé. Then to finish the soup, all I do is add my lima juice, which we're gonna do just before serving. I wanna just tell you quickly, what's a lima? You keep hearing this term, sopa de lima. What is a lima? Here we have a lime, and here we have a lima. And you notice the very unique difference in their tips, and I assure you that the taste is different. Here I have cut open some. This is a lima. You see how much more yellow it is. This is our lime, which is more vivid green. The lima is a lot more floral, and the lime is makes you pucker, whereas the lima is, again, just more aromatic, more floral. Okay, now I told you instead of our totopos, our crispy bits on top of the soup, which is traditional, we're going to use our panucho that we just made outside. And but of course we have to tweak it and update it, modernize it a little bit, and so we're not using the traditional toppings. Instead, we're making what is called a dzik. We start out here. I'm going to add our base of chicken. Now this is our shredded achote chicken, you remember. Usually here we use deer, believe it or not, for dzik. We use venison. In this case, we're going to use chicken. I'm going to put all of this in here. Now, one by one, if you'd hand me the ingredients, some radishes that we have julienned, some tomatoes chopped up. I want to add some chives and some chopped red onion, please. Thank you. And another important element in this, in dzik always, is some shredded cabbage. And I just want to see how this is looking right now. I want to see that really becoming like a salad. And some cilantro, if you could hand to me. Thank you very much. This is just finely chopped. Again, add more or less according to your taste. This looks pretty good. And finally, I want to add our friend, the habanero. Please don't leave it out. It's really hot, I know, and some of you don't like the heat, but it's essential, and you'll get just a little bite in there with your soup, and you're gonna enjoy it. And that is our dzik. The only thing missing is a tiny bit of salt, a pinch of salt, and just a little bit of lima juice, and again, we're gonna put that all in right before serving. So I'm gonna now add just a little bit of our lima juice. Thanks, Diana. And give that a good toss. Let's finish up our soup by making the rest of the ingredients, assembling everything. That's right, take about a tablespoon of the dzik and pinch it up in the middle like you just did. That's excellent. Right, a little, maybe a little more. Bunch it up in the middle, it makes a nicer presentation. That's right, now those are ready to go. As for me, I'm going to be straining our lima into our consommé at last, just before serving. We're ready to go. Give it a good stir here with our ladle. This can wait in the fridge another minute if you wish. Okay, now we're ready to do our plating. And this is how we do our secrets of getting the panucho to float in the lake of sopa. And we just put one lima section in the center of each bowl. Okay, we're ready now. I have my lima centered right in the dead center of the bowl. I just carefully ladle on some of the soup around the edges. And now I take our little panucho, Place it right on top. And to finish it off, I'm going to put on another wedge of lima, which is just going to remind us of the basic ingredient of our sopa. There we have it.
It's just delicious. David, I want to propose a toast. Here's to a beautiful dish.
Cheers.
Cheers to everybody. Provecho.
Thanks for coming to the
Now that dish that David just made, that chilled sopa de Lima, well, it's one style of modern Mayan cuisine. The type that starts with some pretty traditional flavorings and preparations and then just respectfully updates them using modern methods and presentations. But I mean, most of the people in the Yucatan cook in a much more traditional, slowly evolving style. I mean, most of them are of Mayan descent. Many of them still speak Mayan dialects. And of course, they cook with Mayan ingredients and techniques, even if they have absorbed a lot of European ones over the last 500 years or so. And then there's all of this. I mean, it's the hip, high-style world of the booming Riviera Maya, and along with the blooming sophistication that you find across the peninsula in Merida, it's just filled with all kinds of exciting new architecture and design ideas. They're rooted in the past, but they're decidedly modern Mayan. And they'll take you to places that you've never been before. Now there are two chef owners here at Nectar, Roberto Solis and Santiago Pineda, and they're on the forefront of this whole modern Mayan movement. They were both raised here in Merida, and then they opened this restaurant back in 2003. But the really cool thing is that every year, when the restaurant goes through its slow period, they close the place up and they head someplace in the world to do a stint with some of the most famously innovative and rule-breaking chefs in the business. And the thing about their food is that it isn't just about breaking rules and showing off. It's about experience. Well, or maybe you'd say re-experiencing the familiar, even ancient flavors in brand new ways. And it's really, really tasty. Gracias. Muchas gracias. Case in point, Cochinita soup. Now, Cochinita, you know what that is. It's that succulent, soulful, earthy Yucatecan pork dish, you know, where they marinate it in achiote, wrap it in banana leaves, and then bake it in a pit in the ground over hot rocks for hours and hours. Well, what the chefs have done is to take those flavors and rearrange them in a whole new way. Now, when they're putting this plate together, the first thing that they do is in the bottom, they put a little of that achiote, you know, the marinade for the pork, but they've put a little gelatin in it so that when that rich, hot pork broth hits it, well, you get a chance to experience that moment, that like the moment when you've taken the top off of the pit and you smell that achiote for the first time. And then, of course, they chopped up the cochinita meat and they put it into a little wonton wrapper and fried it crisp. And they've served it with all the classic cochinita accompaniments. The little pickled red onion on the top. Over here is avocado. It's a swipe of avocado mashed with cilantro on the side here. On top of that, there's a little crispy fried tortilla all chopped up to remind you that sometimes Cochinita makes some pretty good crisp fried tacos. And then on top of all of that, well, it's a little local herb, a delicate one called frescura. Exquisite. You know, you see a lot of cerebral, fancy restaurant food these days. You know, the kind of dishes that are a lot more about the concept and the flavor. You know what I love about Roberto and Santiago's food? Well, it's thoughtful, it's playful, it says something about what's old and what's new. And when you taste it, you know you're in the Yucatan. You get that hit of Mayan spirit in every bite. So my take on modern Mayans, going to weave together tomatoes and habaneros, that classic Yucatecan combination, with a garlic cilantro marinade, some salmon, some pasta. Well, let me just get started with the marinade here. I've got a bunch of cilantro that I'm just going to roughly cut, stems and all. And then I'm going to scoop that all into the blender jar. Throw in a couple of cloves of garlic. Those were peeled cloves of raw garlic. I'm going to drizzle in some olive oil. And of course, since this is a marinade, it's going to need some salt. It's going to need a fair amount because this is a major seasoning in this dish. So we'll put the top on the blender and make a puree out of that cilantro and garlic. Okay, that I am going to pour over these beautiful wild-caught salmon fillets. Now that looks just beautiful, and this is of course destined for the grill. There we go. But also destined for the grill will be these tomatoes, habanero, and some garlic. Kind of my twist in this case on the roasted tomato habanero sauces of the Yucatan. Now that garlic, after it's grilled, will be soft on the inside, sort of blotchy black on the outside. Peel all the skins off of it. The tomatoes, I've already peeled most of those, but they too will be soft with their blackened skin that you can just peel right off once they've gotten cool. Now into the blender, all of this mix is going to go. All tomatoes, all of the garlic, and I'm going to throw in I'd say probably 2 of these roasted habaneros because I think 2 will give us the right amount of heat for this dish. Then we're going to blend that to a smooth consistency. Now I'm going to use this grilled tomato habanero sauce to make lasagna with. And I've got about 4 cups of puree here, but I'm going to need about 6 cups of sauce. So I'm going to add water, and I'm going to sprinkle in salt because it's got to be a finished sauce. Give that just a little whir through the blender like that. I'm going to take a cup of the sauce away, pour it into a skillet so that I can use that for a little garnish at the end. Now we're going to make a filling for our modern Mayan lasagna that'll start off sort of like you would expect a lasagna filling to start, with some ricotta cheese, but then we're going to give it a couple of Mexican twists here. I'm going to add to it about a half a cup of Mexican crema, you know, that very rich, nutty tasting cream, sort of like creme fraiche, a good handful of finely chopped cilantro, and then I'm going to crack in 3 eggs. All of that will get stirred together, and we're ready to move on then to the layering of the lasagna. Now in the restaurant, most of us would boil dried pasta or even make some fresh pasta of our own, but I'm going to give you a little time-saving tip for home. I sometimes use this no-boil lasagna. It just makes things go really super fast. So when you layer it to make your lasagna, I'm going to put about 1/4 of our sauce here in the bottom, and then the next step is to take some of these pasta sheets, 4 of them to be exact. They look real different than the regular lasagna sheets that you have to boil, and you just kind of stagger them through like that, nestling them into your sauce. Now a little bit more sauce will go over the top of it here, and I'm going to put half of the ricotta mix on top of that, and then we'll just keep layering pasta, sauce, and ricotta until we reach the top, and sprinkle it with a little Mexican Chihuahua cheese. Now cover it with foil and put it into a 375-degree oven and bake it for about 45 minutes. Now that little bit of sauce that we separated out, I've cooked it down till it's very thick. That'll give it a nice cooked flavor. And then I'm going to add a little bit of broth to it and whirl that around to make a sauce that we'll use to garnish our plates. Now this is the lasagna after it's baked. I actually uncovered it for the last 15 minutes of bacon so it would brown a little bit, but here's a little restaurant trick. If you want beautiful presentation, then you let it cool off completely so you can cut the squares, and then I cut the squares into triangles, and it's now time to reheat them for our final beautiful presentation. Slide those into a hot oven along with that grill marked salmon, and we'll reheat the two of them together. Slide those warm triangles of our modern Mayan lasagna onto a plate, top it with a piece of that grilled salmon, drizzle a little of the sauce around, a spoonful of Mexican crema on top, and a shower of cilantro. So what is modern Mayan cuisine? I mean, is it a kind of food archaeology that unearths ingredients and recipes from the past and preserves them for the future? Or is it a reinvention of all of those ideas in fresh new ways? Well, I'd say to me it's probably a little of both. But you know what? It's really a lot more than that. No, what we're experiencing right now isn't just a simple evolution. It's a lot more conscious than that. And when all that heady stuff meets up with the stuff of the heart, the tastes and textures and smells that we all just love, that's when the magic happens. Now, you know, the name Uxmal means thrice built. The old Mayan tradition of building new temples over existing ones, the foundation of previous generations holding up the pride of the present while reaching toward the future. And you know, all that's still going on today, the building and the rebuilding, the head and the heart, the reverence and the rule breaking. And you know what? That's the thrill of modern Mayan cuisine.